I'm Kristin Poole, the artistic director at the Foster, and we're so delighted to be here today with Barbara Teller-Ornelas, who is a fifth generation master Navajo weaver. She specializes in two Gray Hill style pieces. Her dad, a man named Sam Teller, worked at the two Gray Hills trading post in New Mexico, and that is where Barbara was raised with her two sisters and her brothers. And I'm so grateful for you taking your time today. You're a superstar in my mind, and so I feel so honored to be here with you. And I don't really even know, I don't think, Barbara, the sort of origin story about how you got connected to Tony Foster, and how is it that your beautiful piece of weaving ended up as a part of his Sacred Places exhibition. Can you fill in that blank for us?
Sure, but first I want to introduce myself and just to let people know who I am. My Shay Barbara Teller-Ornelas in she kabahin shno to hetli ni pashin hatnagani dashan lashini dashe dit ananishna. Hi, my name is Barbara Teller-Ornelas. I'm of the Edgewater people, born for water that flows together, and my grandfather's clans are one who walks around and Red Bottom people, and this is who I am. And yeah, I've been weaving for a long time. You know, I probably started when I was like around 6, 7 years old. You know, I finished my first piece when I was 8, and I sold my first piece when I was 10. And so I was always a weaver, and that's how I was known. And Kathy in the Panacola, who worked at the gallery, got a hold of me and told me that Tony was painting these sacred sites, and would I be interested in doing a piece for that? And I'm like, well, I'm not really a pictorial weaver, but they wanted something to connect myself and my family to the weaving to come from the canyon. Mm-hmm. You know, I have my choice of picking which site I wanted to weave a piece for, and I chose Canyon de Chelly because my grandfather was from Canyon de Chelly. His family and his grandfathers were ones who were captured and took to Bosco Redondo, and you know, and so I have some real emotional and family ties to the place. I wanted to do something completely different for this piece. I wanted something, I wanted to come out of my element because I saw all the paintings that Tony had done, you know, so I don't know if you have a picture of the piece, but I can show you on my phone.
Yes, thank you.
This is what it looks like. So the border that you see here, the black part here represents the outside of the earth. And then the pattern, the white pattern that you see on the outside is the canyon walls. Okay, so then you see these little diamonds sit all the way around. Okay, yes. That represents my family's path inside the canyon. And I left little spaces in between where they could escape. And some of my family escaped during the Bosco Redondo, and some got captured. And so I made little escape pods for them. The middle part represents Spider Rock. To me and to Navajo weavers, that is considered holy ground. That's where Spider Woman lived, and that's where Spider Woman learned how to weave from the spiders, and that's where she taught the Navajo women the art of weaving. This is the only weaving I've ever done like this.
Wow!
It's part of my favorite pieces, and so and I attribute it to my family, and I call it my Canyon de Chelly piece.
Oh, Barbara, it's just wonderful.
I took a trip to the canyon, and I just sat at the rim and just watched the canyon, you know, watch Spider Rock, and I saw how the sun went over the rock and the shadows, and then all the colors I saw is what I put in the piece.
That's wonderful. It's really interesting because it is that, you have such complicated and deep memories of place because of family history.
Right.
And, Tony comes into this experience as an outsider on many levels. He's a white guy from Great Britain, and yet his experience of place is really about being quiet and being present there. And so he records what he sees unfold in front of him. And I love that you sort of echo that visual experience in what you saw there too.
I didn't realize that that's what he did, and
yeah.
I wove the piece, and at the opening, I mentioned to some people that this is how I came up with the colors and the designs and stuff. And then they're saying that you sound just like Tony, when he was painting the piece. And I had no idea we had the same connection that way.
Isn't that wonderful? That's really wonderful. And I know you have a long history of teaching, and can you speak to why it seems like such a central part of your life? And can you talk about that a little bit? Because I know you're also, your weavings are in demand, and so there must be some pull of time there.
Well, like I said, I started weaving when I was about 5 or 6 years old. My mom taught me the basics, and my grandmother taught me the stories, the legends, the songs, the prayers that go with my weaving. And my older sister Roseanne taught me the techniques, and the design, how to design the pieces and stuff. And so I have all this knowledge with me, and I say I'm the 5th generation weaver only because it's been recorded. I'm sure there's way more than that, so my kids my daughter and my son are the 6th generation, and then my granddaughter and my grandson will be the 7th. There are two or three reasons why I teach. One is, and then, I have problems with Navajo weavers telling me that I shouldn't teach weaving to non-natives, but I was telling them that everywhere you go, you need allies. These non-weavers, these non-Navajo native weavers are not going to be weavers like us. They're going to be our allies. Every time something comes up, I call on them, and they bombard places with letters and phone calls and stuff, and because they truly believe in the art of weaving. They understand what we go through. And I go, and that's one of the main reasons why I teach non-native people. But within the last 10 years, I've been teaching a lot of Navajo students. And my sister and I have another weaving schedule at the Herd Museum in May. And we have 20 students, but 128 people signed up. And they're all Navajos. And
wow.
we have to pick ones that are going to be truly serious about this. And then my sister and I are picking students that we know that will learn we're teaching them how to teach.
Right.
And so that, because someday my sister and I, we're going to have to retire. We can't do this forever. And so we need young students, and we need to teach them how to teach. And they need to know the ins and outs of Navajo weaving. They need to know the history. They need to know, they need to research their own families' backgrounds to find out what happened, how the weavings broke, and a lot of the students are saying that my mom didn't weave, my grandmother didn't weave, and you have to ask why, and they say, well, they had to go to work, or they went to boarding school, and they never passed it forward.
Yeah, there was that break, that historic break of generations when boarding school was trying to rip you clean of traditions and talents, and also there was this desire to sort of integrate in a way that feels now in retrospect so inappropriate, but
with me, I went to boarding schools too. And then the minute I got home, my mom had a loom set up, so I wove during Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter, and then, for the summers. And then the
could you not weave at school?
No, no, because they didn't consider it appropriate, I guess is the word.
Yes.
And but with them telling you that you can't speak your language, you can't do this and this and this, and it's art is included in all that,
Yes.
So, but I think my mom and my grandmother, Nellie Teller, they were very, very strong women, and they made it a point to make sure that my younger sister and my older sister and I were weavers. And then you had mentioned about male weavers, and then if they could be, we've always had men weavers, always, and Spider Woman did not discriminate, and she taught everybody, and a lot of the Two-Spirit people are really good, excellent weavers, and
I didn't know that. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, and then when with my dad working at the trading post, you would see these male weavers bring in their pieces, and then my dad would say, whose name should I put on there? And then they would pick their mom or their sister or their grandmother, as long as I had a woman's name on it, they can sell their pieces. But it's the men weaver. I think from like maybe the 50s on to like maybe the 80s, there was such a stigma against male weavers. And so they had to hide their weavings, and then my mom and my Aunt Margaret, they used to laugh about, they would say that there's a lot of famous women weavers that have never woven a rug in their lives.
Well, we're so honored. We're so honored to have you part of this exhibition, and we're so grateful for your time today. I feel like you've answered so many of my questions in such a wonderful way of sharing your history with us. I'm so grateful, and I know that it meant so much for Tony, not just because it was a collaboration of sorts and you responding to his work, but that he's so sensitive to the fact that he chose to come into a land that was not his own and try to see it and honor it in a new way, and for you to honor him and his approach by making this rug is really quite wonderful. So we're so grateful. We're just so grateful, and I'm excited that you're carrying on, and your kids and your grandkids are going to benefit from your wonderful history. It's spectacular. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me and for including me in this project.
Yeah.
It was the best times I've ever had.
Hi, I'm here with artist explorer Tony Foster to talk about Ancient Origins, the section of the Sacred Places journey that Tony did about 5-10 years ago, almost at this point. And specifically today, we're going to talk about Spider Rock in Canyon de Chelly. Tony, I was doing some research, and I was kind of stunned to see how big Canyon de Chelly is. How did you figure out where in that expanse you were going to paint?
Well, the canyon itself, I guess, doesn't seem that large. Maybe the parks, the area surrounding it is included in that. But the interesting part, of course, from my point of view, is the canyon itself. And actually, there's a rim trail around certainly most of it. And so I simply traveled around the rim, looking at all the notable sites. And then I simply noted down in my sketchbook the things that looked most interesting, went and researched them, discovered or tried to figure out where I could actually sit out of the way to do a painting, because privacy is an important part of my practice, really.
Sure.
And then simply limited it down until until I could do the work I wanted to do. I realized that Spider Rock was going to make an extraordinary painting because it's just an extraordinary object. But I didn't do that in 2010, which is when I first went to Canyon de Chelly. I went to Canyon de Chelly just after I'd been to Monument Valley. I drove from Monument Valley to Canyon de Chelly, camped there, and spent some time traveling around the rim, just checking out the sites really. And having done that, I then focused on the particular area that I made that painting.
You're out in places that other people have deemed sacred, that are not necessarily the most beautiful places on the planet, and you are in the process of investigating and interpreting from others' point of view, and then it all gets complicated because of the horrible history of exploitation and mistrust and lies that happened between the Native community, and also the idea of wilderness is in conflict, right? Because as you said, you're used to wilderness. This landscape, I read, is the oldest continuously inhabited place in North America.
Right.
I mean, so, you know, the roads and the car parks and the sense of these layers of use and history, that is the truth of the land.
Yeah, so, exactly. And of course, what I was doing was celebrating that in a way, or trying to.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, I was thinking, they don't want me to celebrate it. They just want it left alone.
This uncomfortableness that we all feel about trying to honor and respect, and at the same time tell the story of place, is the tension in this exhibition that I think is actually one of its most valuable assets. Is really, I do. I think that history and honoring use and reinterpreting things is a complex thing to do. And what we may be saying about this place now may be a different story that needs to be told in 50 years. And what tribal communities want to share now may be different in 25 years. I mean, your ability to land in a place and see it and digest it and share it, that's your skill. Obviously, so many people were in this land and of this land for so long. And yet you look at this picture behind me, which was part of Canyon de Chelly and Spider Rock series that you did. And it looks like nobody's ever there. You know, it looks very desolate. Did you, I mean, obviously you went out knowing it was Navajo tribal land. Did you get a sense when you were there that there were this been long occupancy? I mean, could you feel that when you were painting?
Not so much that, but I certainly knew the sort of recent back history, as you might say, of the Navajo having been cleared out of there by Kit Carson, and the cave where you know over 100 Navajo were simply slaughtered by the Spanish, and so I knew it had a tragic history, and that made me tread much more carefully, I think, because it was very, very symbolic, and the symbolism of the place is all important to the Navajo as far as I could make out, and so it did make me very wary of you know, just treading on people's toes, really.
Sure.
And trying to you know, interact with the people that I met in a straightforward way as I could, but acknowledging that this has a terrible history, this place, and okay, they're back there now, but they're never going to forget that.
Right. Well, I really, really appreciated how you subtly honor that history. In the one painting, you have as a souvenir, you have the peach pits.
No, the peach pits, yeah, that's right.
Before Kit Carson came, they had this really robust civilization in the
Yes,
canyon there,
yes.
and many fruit trees. And since they've come back, they have replanted. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes, that's right. And they're immensely proud of them. Yes.
I love that. And I love that looking at the painted image, you wouldn't necessarily know that history, but that you signal it and you honor it in the
Yes.
souvenirs. So, so that's in the canyon, you just say Deshay looking 25 degrees northeast. In the Spider Rock image, where you're really at the overlook, the souvenir that you include there is a small woven piece. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes. Well, my understanding is that Spider Woman taught the Navajo to weave.
Yeah.
And that is obviously a very important part of their culture. And they make extraordinarily beautiful pieces of weaving, as we all know. We see them commonly all over the place. And so I thought I should simply connect those two things. And so I simply bought that little tiny piece of weaving to go with the painting. There's nothing more complex than that. I found it, I bought it, and I thought that would fit perfectly with what I was trying to say, really, which was that as I understood that part of Navajo philosophy, that that's why Spider Rock, one of the reasons why Spider Rock was so important to them.
Okay, so you went in on horseback.
Yes.
What's the story there? I don't have this image of you as a horseback rider.
No, you're quite right. I've only ever been on a horse twice in my life. And so they gave me a horse called Perky, and this horse was Perky. And so I sat on it, and this horse was always kind of leaping forward. And all the Navajos were laughing because they said, well, that one used to be a racehorse. And and so it always had to be at the front. It would not go behind any other horse, provided it was in front and I kept tapping it on the nose. I could keep it under control. But I mean, it's the merest stroke of luck I never came off the darn thing. But actually, it was quite a nice way to travel.
So Spider Rock rises out of the canyon floor.
Yeah, it's the most extraordinary object.
It looks that way in your paintings. How did you figure out a perspective to how did you find those locations?
Well, I mean, I scoped around quite a lot, as you can imagine, because if you're going to spend a few days working on something, you have to be in the right place. Right. And so I scoped it out, and I found not only did I find exactly the right perspective, but also I managed to position myself, because it is a place that people go to. I mean, it is an extraordinary thing. I'm not the lonely man out there on my own. I wished I was, but I wasn't. But I managed to hide behind a tree so that most people, or some trees and shrubs, so that most people didn't see me. And I was actually only on the way to the end of the route, kind of thing. So, but it was the perfect spot. And I had my sheet of paper vertically because it's a vertical painting, and simply balanced it on my knee. And but at first, when I drew it, I guess I was drawing for about 4 or 5 hours, and then I realized that I'd started too far down on the paper, and I wasn't going to get what I needed in the
frame of the picture.
In the frame. So I made a complete mistake, one I don't often make, and so I simply turned the paper over and started again, having lost 5 hours work.
Wow.
And started again, repositioned it, and I think got it exactly right.
Wow. So you didn't change locations, you just changed how it was.
Yeah. I realized I just made a bad mistake. And I guess I'm not used to drawing an object like that, really, that sort of, looking down on something which is such an extraordinary vertical object, and which is luckily a focal point of, if you see those diagonals coming in at the sides, you can see them on, where you're sitting now. You can see them. You've got the verticals, and then you've got the diagonal scree slopes either side, which sort of frame it and focus your eye on exactly what you want it focused on. And the rest, in a way, merges into the background, because, of course, what you want is for this to be absolutely center stage. And so it is.
I see what you mean, that the purple rock on the left side comes down at an angle, and the slope of the trees on the right-hand side comes down. You have such wonderful trick of composition. Thank you. I always learn so much. I do, and I
It's
just
always a pleasure because
I-
you make me think too.
it's really fantastic. So thank you so much.